Today is Saturday, May the 27th, 2017, and we are here at the Stilesboro Academy in downtown Stilesboro to be able to share with you the history of the Stilesboro Improvement Club, which are the owners of the Academy today. My name is Jan Dudley Shepherd. I've been a member of the club since 1979 when I married Leroy Shepherd. The club is very dear to my heart because as a child, from birth through my teenager years, before I went to college, my mother always brought me to the club meetings and I was a part of the activities. My dad, Pledger Dudley, was also a student here before the club became ownership. So to keep the academy for today's generation, the future generations, I want to be a part of that, along with the two ladies that I have with me today, Sue Shepherd and Suzanne Brock. Sue, would you like to say a little bit about your membership of the club?
Okay, I joined in the late 1960s after high school and everything, but I was brought up in the club with Mother, Dorothy Smith Dudley. And if you're wondering, Jan and I are sisters. But at this point in this time, I am the longest active member on the club roll and all.
Yeah. Miss Suzanne?
Well, I guess I was born into the Stilesboro Improvement Club because when I was a little bitty girl, well, I was 7 when we moved to my mother's sister's house, Miss Campy Hawkins. My mother was Catherine Jackson Brock, and we lived with Aunt Campy from that time forward. And at 7, she started teaching me how to grow chrysanthemums, and that was one of the big projects the club had. So I started out as a member when I was born, because my mother, even before 7, came to everything that happened up here.
It sounds good. It sounds like there's a lot of history that we're going to be able to share today because it's been in our blood for our whole life, and that's good for us. But Sue, can you kind of go into some detail about how the club came about, how we got the name, and when the club meetings was always done?
There was Miss Jessie McCormick, and she had thought and pondered on it for quite some time, the need that it was to organize a ladies' club here in the community. And in March the 25th, 1910, she had got a group of ladies ranging from age elderly married ladies and to the young ladies of just out of high school and college. And they met and discussed everything, and the first thing on the agenda was to come up with a name, and they named the club the Stilesboro Village Improvement Club. And they met the first and third Fridays of each month. And then later on they decided they needed a social meeting too, and they met in between those 2 times for social, just to have a social. And then they went and had the meetings for a while just on a Wednesday afternoon, but that didn't seem to work out very well with traveling time and so forth. But they went back to Friday afternoon and began to meet in the homes. And then later, and the sole purpose of these meetings were for the preservation of the Stilesboro Academy and the needs of the community. And then later they renamed the club to the Stilesboro Improvement Club. And today the club meets the second Saturday, I'll get it right in a minute, of each month in the members' homes as different hostesses. And still today we meet with the sole purpose of preservation of the academy and the needs of the community.
And this year, how old is the club?
The club was 107 years old back in March.
Long time for a club to be still active and in operation. So that's a good plus for us in this little community. Suzanne, could you tell us some of the facts of why they thought the club should be formed? What was going on in the community at the time, and what was the needs of the community?
Well, Jan, at the time there were no public schools, so there was no central meeting place for young people to meet, children to meet, to learn about things. So they learned in their homes what I guess today would be called homeschool, but they wanted to broaden the education of their children and get them acquainted with other people aside from the ones that were right in their immediate vicinity. And most of the kids that came to school here lived pretty much in the community close by, but that was a working era and a lot less socializing than we do today. Transportation was not what it is today. Roads were not what they are today, so it was harder to get together. The club wanted to help the community to be better educated, so some of the members of the community got up the funds, donated the property and the materials, and then set about to build a building and hired teachers and set up some trustees, and it went on from there.
As the many community involvements that we had as ladies, or former ladies of the club had, I know that as we were doing the wars, because we had many outbreaks of wars, the Civil War, the war between the states, the War of 1812 and all, the ladies in this community jumped in and wanted to help and aid our soldiers in everything they could. Not with the use of automobiles, because we didn't have rubber tires then. They had to come by foot and they had to come by wagon. So it was very common to see people walking to their festivals or to their whatever they were doing by foot. So one of the big things that was outstanding to that was, Suzanne, could you kind of tell us what they did for the soldiers of the war that was really important, that we aided our country for our freedom?
Well, they wanted to make a contribution to the community, as I said before, and one of the ways they contributed to the community was to aid these people that were involved in the wars and people that were in need in the community. So they met here in this building a lot of times and made handmade quilts, and they worked on uniforms for the various men who protected us that were from our community, and donated money to the Red Cross to aid the fighting men. And a number of men from our community fought in just most of the wars. Of course, in the Civil War, I'm sure all of them did. But they made lots of contributions at that point in time to the war effort.
It was very important for them to help where help was needed. And I know the benches that y'all are sitting on today was something before our time and before the club was actually formed. But what were these benches used for during Sherman's march to the sea?
Well, the history records that they were used as feeding troughs. They were strapped together, face to face, and the soldiers poured feed in them and fed their horses out of them. We don't really know the origin of the benches, but since the middle room was used most of those early years as a chapel, because there were always there was a morning chapel before you started your classroom activities, and I just thought maybe these benches were in there for the students to sit on before they adjourned to their classrooms.
During the chapel time.
Yes.
Yeah. So the club didn't always own the academy. The trustees on the academy that was on the board for the Stilesboro Consolidated School. So how did the club actually get the deed to the academy?
The academy and the properties got in poor need of, in need of repair. So the trustees decided to take the building down. And when the ladies found out that they were taking the building down, well, there was an uproar in the community. They weren't going to have such as that tearing this fine building down. And so they banded together and they sent a committee to the trustees to see if maybe they could save the building. So they decided that if they could secure property to build a new school building on, then maybe they wouldn't take this building down. They talked to them and they agreed, And the property west of the present building was secured from the owners at that time, and that they came to the trustees with that information, and that they made an exchange. At that point in time, the trustees agreed to hand the deed over to us, to the members at the time, and in exchange for leaving the building standing. And by the way, a lot of those early members, we don't even remember.
Right, and I think the academy was actually deeded over to the club in 1941.
Yes.
So it has been many years within the hands of the club. And so it tells you as we're going along, the women of the community were very feisty women because they weren't going to take no for an answer. So when they got their heads together, they knew how to get funds raised and they knew how to make things happen. So Sue, could you tell us a little bit about the fundraisers that the club has had, because it's an ongoing issue?
Yes, as always, you've got to have fundraisers to keep the finance part of every situation going. And in the early days and years, we have found that they had two main fundraisers, and that was ice cream socials, and then they had refreshment stands at the May picnic, which is the first Saturday in May now. But the fundraisers go on, and today we have several during the year. We have our main fundraiser is the Chrysanthemum Show, which is held the first Saturday of November. And we have a small tea room that serves lunch and dinner, and with homemade Brunswick stew, congealed salads, chicken salad, and homemade cakes of many different kinds. And it's from 11 to 7. And then we have a bake sale in mid-April, usually around Easter, Saturday before Easter. Then we have a plant sale the end of April. April's a very busy month, seems like. And then we have a handmade quilt by the members and some friends. We embroider the squares and then quilt it, and we sell tickets on this and give it away at the night of the flower show. And then about a year ago, one of the members came up with the idea. She said, there are so many good recipes among the members and some of the earlier members that we need to publish a cookbook, which we did. It's Cooking with Friends in Stilesboro, that has been very successful in the past year. And there's a lot of good recipes in there, and we all enjoy that very much. We just have a good time with our fundraisers and go at it and see what we can come up with.
We had many community events and everything that we carried on here at the club, at the academy. We had weddings, we had proms, we had wedding receptions, we had graduations from the Stilesboro Consolidated School. They would come up and have their graduation ceremonies here. We had churches. The club actually had some cooking schools because we had to show the women how to cook with electricity, because back then they cooked with the stoves, the wooden stoves and all. So we had those activities. Along with those, as the club wanted to have some social activities amongst ourselves. So we had a Valentine outing. In August, as a group, we try to go somewhere. And then in December, we have a social hour. We don't have a business meeting. We have that social hour that we have. From all the social events, one that really come to mind to me, and I guess means a lot to me because both you and Sue were a part, Suzanne and Sue, you were both a part of those festivals. And that was when the members of the club was able to get the building painted for the first time. They wanted to do a celebration. So they did a May Day festival in celebration of having the academy on the outside painted. And from that, both of you had special parts of those activities, and I would like for each of you to say what activities you were involved in, because I was only 2, so I can't remember much activities, except probably running around and getting in the way and crying all the time.
Yes, we had a maypole dance, and the junior members, which were preteen daughters of the members, and a lot of the girls that was in the grammar school here at Stilesboro. And we practiced for months during recess under the guidance of Gladys Tiddley to skipping to the and braiding the maypole and all to the tune of Skip to My Lou. And the pole was between 8 and 10 foot tall, and it was different colored pastel streamers. And then the day of the dance, all the girls were dressed in the same colors their streamer was. And we would skip and braid the streamers till we met at the pole, and then we would turn around and do the pole of the dance opposite and skip back out. And of course, we were all thought we were something great and special that day, being a part of such a big event. And we just had a great, wonderful time at that centennial celebration.
Skipping and skipping, right?
Yeah, we skipped and skipped around that pole. I don't know if we could skip this day and time or not.
And this year, it was the 148th year of continuous picnics, so we would like to see that continue on for many years to come.
Oh, yes, and everyone is invited to come to the picnic the first Saturday, bring a picnic basket full of food, and just enjoy all the fun and the fellowship.
And eat.
And after the May Day picnic, not the picnic, but the Maypole dance, I guess there was some more activities that you participated in real heavy.
Well, at that point, I was crowned Queen of the May. I don't know how I became the Queen of the May. I decided that probably it was because I had so many family members that were involved in the club, so if anybody else could have been appointed as the Queen, my family members probably overruled. But anyway, they had a parade across the stage of all kinds of activities that had been involved in the community all through the years. They had people danced in the fancy dress of the time, which was more work clothes, work dresses, I guess. Nearly it was Sunday dresses, I guess. And people paraded across the stage in some of them in their work clothes. The soldiers came in uniform, and some of the people that came across danced. There was one couple that waltzed across the stage. I think I was saluted by some of the military men, and then a young couple of girls, and I think they were maybe from my class or somewhere. They were around my age, but they did the Charleston across the stage. So there was a lot of prancing across that stage when all that was going on, and it was fun for everybody. I don't remember a whole lot about it. I was 14 at the time, so I don't remember everything.
But you did get a big bouquet of flowers, just like Miss
Yes.
America does today with a crown.
Yes.
And you had a court, I believe, of 4 girls, and
I
one
did.
of those was your sister, Virginia. And so everybody had a part in it, and everybody thought they were something for that day, right?
And one of them was Jan and Sue's sister, the youngest daughter. Handed me my flowers, so I had a bouquet of flowers, which was red roses, and that was uncommon for that day unless you picked them out of the yard. They looked like long stem red roses, so that was special too for everybody.
And you're very fortunate because your mama made a little memory book, kept the program, kept the crown, had some pictures and all, and you still have that in your possession today.
I do.
Which is not only history, but it's a very, very valuable thing to me that it shows, because we was able to know that Miss Gladys Tilley was a part of that. And don't you know those little girls trying to go up and under with their streamers on the maypole, that she had her hands full.
I know.
So I wonder if she had her little hickory out there making them go right and skipping right, because I'm sure that they knew what they needed to do, which was right or wrong on that. So as we've talked about many things that's going on in the club, and the other thing that's a fundraiser that has been since 2 years after the club was formed is the Chrysanthemum Show. It's one of the oldest fundraisers that we have today, and this year it will be 105 years old. We have had a show every year except for 1 year, and that was when President Wilson was in office, and he had taken sick. So the ladies of the club at that time took 12 white mums that they had grown, and they boxed them up and sent them to President Wilson for him to enjoy. In that return, we have gotten a thank you note from the staff there from his office thanking us for that is still in our possession. So not only did we just keep in mind of the community, we reached out as far as we could in everything we did. And Suzanne's great aunt was the start or the suggestion of having the flower show. So can you give us a little bit about when the flowers come, what we do and to get our big football moms?
Well, first off, Aunt Campy, who we later lived with after I was 7 years old, she was my mother's sister, and she was in the neighborhood, and she saw some, what people call today mums, but the actual name of them is chrysanthemum. And she saw them in the yard, and she asked the lady who was growing the flowers, where in the world did you get them, and where can I get some? I'd like to grow some too. So she proceeded to get some herself, grew some in her yard, and when she got them ready to gather, she decided that as a club, she could have a tea for them, and that could be maybe a potential fundraiser if the ladies would agree, which they did. And that was the beginning of the chrysanthemum show. And now we have one every year. We've had a lot in my lifetime. We work very hard to have a pretty place to put our flowers that we grow just out in the open. We don't grow in greenhouses, and have a lot of problems with them, a lot of insects. And some years the weather doesn't cooperate with us, but we always have a pretty show. We decorate the entire building, and as Sue said, we have refreshments, or not really refreshments, we have a full meal, and everybody enjoys it. People have been coming here all their lives for that chrysanthemum show, and a lot of them are on canes now, and we're beginning to get a lot of younger ones coming in. I think a lot of that has to do with Facebook, so we're glad to have them all, and we are always in need of new members.
And the club and the flower show is the main thing, and we do work on it because we get our flowers in May. We have to play with those flowers or tend to those flowers just about every day, because you get a one chance in the bloom, because sometimes you only leave 2 blooms on it, so it'll be big. Everybody wants their flower to be as big as their head. So at that point in time, you don't need to be a big head person, because you really got to grow a big flower then. But then when the grasshopper comes along and he loves that bud, he likes to nip that thing out, and there you are. And Sue, I know that you mentioned about the homemade items that we serve in the tea room. And the cakes are made homemade from scratch. We have congealed salads that the ladies and some of the friends of the community contribute to, but they're also homemade. We don't have anything that's actually bought. And we have the Brunswick stew that's made, and the Brunswick stew is made all night long. My husband, Leroy Shepherd, is the stew master right now, and he works all night long hand turning wood paddles on the stew, along with a couple of friends that come down and help them. So ours is not made with electricity. It's still made with gas and out of the old iron pots that they were made throughout the years of serving. And so then we have the chicken salad, which we take and have hens that we purchase, and they're cooked the day before. So after the flower show is judged, our flowers have to be entered by 12 o'clock on Friday before the show. Anything after 12 is disqualified. It's not judged. And so we usually have judges that come, and they take and judge our arrangements, because we do have arrangements in the niche, and then they judge the actually different categories that the clubs enters their flowers in. 1 flower, 2 flower, 3 flowers, and if it's the end curve or if it's a spotter. So while they're doing that, the ladies are chopping up the chicken salad, grinding up all the ingredients, and in a big foot tub, actually mixing it up by hand. So we always got everything, our hands are into everything. But before we do the entering of the flower shows, these little ladies were competitive on their flowers. And they do like to keep their secrets on how they make it, from cow tea to oxygen or anything else that they can do for their flowers. And they're not going to share with you. And if they tell you something, you know it's not all the straight truth. It's just a bits and pieces. But I can remember as a child, they would go around to the homes before the show to check out to see who the largest one was, or if someone had one larger than them. So if you had a large flower, you'd go ahead and have it broke, and you might have it hid down in the corn crib, into the barn, or anywhere you could hide it that those people wouldn't find it, because you'd still have some in your pots. So they'll look at them and they'll compare, oh, I've got this one beat. Because when you enter, you have no idea what the other people have. So on Friday morning, everybody comes up, they put them in wine bottles, or a bottle that the neck can hold those flowers up with a little bit of greenery for them to be entered to be judged. So that concludes our history. I hope it was enjoyable for everyone. I would like to thank EVHS, the History Center, Cheryl and Ernestine, for taking your time out today to come out to film us, that we could share memories from our heart and from the history that was written up until 1943 of things that the Improvement Club has done. And there again, with it being such a long club, there's been a lot of history in the making and a lot of things accomplished to preserve this academy for today's generation and the future generations. And I would like to say that we welcome all new ladies. We would love to have a lot of new members. We are not a garden club. The flower show is a moneymaker for us. There is many different activities that need to be done to preserve this academy, so all members have a vital part in making that take place. As Sue had mentioned earlier, the cookbook. There was one of the ladies, she spearheaded that, so she worked many, many hours getting that done. The ladies that do the quilting, not only do they take and embroider the squares, but the squares are put together by one of our members, and then we still are very fortunate to have 2 or 3 members that still quilt. So they actually go over and hand quilt the quilt. But everyone is involved in selling the tickets to make that happen. The end.